Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Jennifer Dotson, and I am your host for Poetry Today. I'm also the founder and program coordinator for Highland Park Poetry, and I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, C.J. Wilkins. She is a local author and poet from Mundelein, Illinois. She enjoys writing poetry as a celebration of life and considers it a form of art, expression, and therapy for the soul. Her book, Aquamarine Soul Whispers, which was published by Orange Hat Publishing, just came out in July 2018. Her poems have also been included in local journals. CJ is a coffee fanatic, a nature lover, and is known to hike and bike throughout Lake County. Her hometown's in the heart of the Midwest, and she loves small town America and the simpler things in life. She's also ridiculously in love with her adopted dog, Quincy. Please welcome C.J. Wilkins. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Oh, thanks so much for coming. So I'm not sure, Quincy, what kind of dog is Quincy? This is what the audience is going to want to know.
And I also go by Carrie, by the way. So Quincy, we don't know exactly what he is. We adopted him not long ago. So he was found roaming the streets, and he was adopted and is now part of our family, some sort of a poodle mix.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that makes him like a large dog, mid-sized dog?
He may have some Bichon or something in him as well. He's pretty small.
Oh, okay.
About 20 pounds. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, now that we've got that on, let's turn our attention to poetry. Okay. So how long have you been writing poetry?
Well, as a form of just personal therapy and as a hobby most of my life. I mean, when I was a little kid, at age 8, I was writing poetry. When I was in high school, I wrote it even more. In fact, my senior year in high school at Hoffman Estates High School, I started writing poetry pretty heavily. And I just turned 40 this year, so this is the first time I've come out and actually written it outside of journals over the years, little journals here and there. But I started getting back to writing through a local writers group called Writer's Block in Vernon Hills, Illinois. And I started attending that group about 2 years ago. And I was inspired by them. Some write poetry, some write fiction, some write just everything under the sun, technical manuals, children's books. Some are published, some are not. Mm-hmm. And it was an amazing inspiration for me, so that I decided just to get out there. And then I started attending your group, the Highland Park Poetry Group, and reading at Madame Zuzu's, and then I started going to other poetry readings, and I kind of got back to it. And I also wrote a small fiction novel that's not published yet. It needs a little bit of work. I think it'll be a 3 to 5 year journey before it's ready. But in that process, I decided, why not just take a collection of poems that I have either written over the years or have, recently written, and just put it out there. So I did that in January of this year, and within a matter of time, I connected with Orange Hat Publishing in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and here we are.
So finding a publisher, I guess, is kind of akin to blind dating, right? I mean, so how did you meet?
You have to get really thick-skinned, just like dating, and be okay with rejection. Really be self-secure. Thank God I've been married for 19 years and didn't have to worry about feeling fully rejected, because it's a lot like dating.
That's good.
Been rejected many times. So you just throw it out there. So you just have to go into it kind of with skin of steel. And, I actually tried that with some of my fiction writing, and I was told, thanks, but no thanks, you're not ready yet. Go back to it. So also for novels, you really need an agent. Poetry, you don't have to have an agent. You can really get out there. You can also fully self-publish, which I've dabbled in a little bit, but I really wanted for this collection, which is personal and near to my heart, to have somebody sponsor it. So Orange Hat is a small indie group, and so they They partner with you, and it's not as scary as trying to find, a big publishing house. I think they've put out 200 books, though, so they're pretty fantastic. They don't do much poetry, so I was a bit of a novelty. They do quite a bit by way of children's books and inspirational books and a whole variety of really cool stuff.
How did you find them?
I'm a Google queen, so I just went out there and I began to research, ask around. Nobody I knew had published through them, though one of my friends may be soon publishing through them.
Oh, okay.
And I submitted blindly. Sent the material and got a call.
You got a call. Oh, wow. Okay, well, that was exciting.
Yeah.
What was so it's actually, compared to some stories that I've heard where, the publisher calls and then it can be a 1.5-year journey from that point on. It sounds like you were on the fast track.
Yeah, it's
with
a small
Orange
collection.
Okay.
Exactly. It's a pretty petite collection. It's bigger than a chapbook, but it's not like a big novel.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
It's under 80 pages.
And so, what was your relationship working with in the sort of the actual development of the book? Did they did they provide editorial services, or were you really supposed to make sure that your manuscript was perfect as is, or did they make suggestions?
They desire quality, so definitely editorial services. I was assigned. We had to kind of like make sure we got along and we had good chemistry, and so I was assigned an editor. I also invited some friends and writers in my own personal circle to do some ad hoc editing as well. So, for example, one of the poems that I'll read today, that's the main piece, theme-wise, I had multiple eyes on. But they did assign an editor, and so Denise and I spent a long time, number of sessions, number of rewrites, and then also we worked with a designer for the cover.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, it's a beautiful cover. But, let's get to the poetry. So maybe you want to start with the poem, I don't know, either the title poem or any poem from the book that you think would be a good launching point for us.
I can do that. All right. We will start with Aquamarine Soul. The loss punched me in the gut, air thick with disquietude, twisting me inside out, as shards of what I thought were dreams wrenched into the layer of my spirit's skin, thoughts woozy as with sickness. In my short-sighted feeling, as sounds of life pounded my head and numbed my consciousness, my heavy body needed to move. I stepped away from the crowd, find a steady stay in nature. I find solace in the water, and let the ocean swallow me whole, simultaneously raising fists to the sky as waves of anger rolled with tides, as tears merged into the salty seas, my angst melting into creation, my insides emptied out. As a wound is bled of poison, I ask God, take me now. But in sync with the explosions of my heart, a new heartbeat began to turn. The air carried a whisper, like a soothing poem with no words. Communication transcending language, inviting me to relinquish my choice, persuading me to sacrifice my way, wooing my heart to trust escape. Freedom that is louder than pain. And God told me that this particular rejected prayer was in reality an answered prayer, the great spiritual oxymoron, using brokenness to breed boldness, replacing insecurity with serenity. And so I carry on, an aquamarine soul, whispering gently to the sky.
Wow, that's intense.
I write fairly intense stuff, yeah.
Wow. And well, and it's very deeply, it's got a deep spiritual element to it.
Yeah.
Do you think that a lot of your writing is that way, or?
Yes and no. If I think of some of my favorite poems and what inspires me, I might be reading Pablo Neruda and his love poems. My husband would say, I'm all feeling. We do our Myers-Briggs together. I'm a total empath. I have, the blessing and curse of the gift of feeling is I can write well. I can feel people's feelings when they don't even feel them, but then I'm always feeling, so writing is like a great outlet. But I also do read and write spiritual things, so I might be writing the Beatitudes, or reading the Beatitudes and writing things that are spiritual. I love all types of spiritual literature. I also enjoy love stories very much, anything romantic. I also I enjoy watching the struggle the processing of how you deal with the struggle of life through writing. So one of the reasons I started writing again and decided to get out there was probably a response to just some of the political turmoil in the world right now. I don't believe in hanging on to anger or disrespecting anyone, but I've struggled a lot with some of what's going on in our world. So, you know, the president I least respect, though I choose to respect the position, is part of the Me Too movement. So too, one of the pastors that I most respected all my life is now part of the Me Too movement. I deal in my mind with the conflict of life. I can't just not look at it. So I like to write about it. And I think that in writing, you can process like the complexity of life, because a lot of things are ambiguous, but a lot of things are clear. Yeah. So life is an oxymoron. And so for me, I just write about it. You know, I think that's your way of trying to find yourself. I like women writers too. And any stories of like dealing with pain and coming out whole inspire me. So Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou, or Mary Oliver's pieces, which a lot of nature in there, a lot of love in there. She likes dogs.
That's a win right there.
I read her poems. I'm like, that's like what I want to write. Or like getting back into some of the greats. You know, when I was in high school, we studied T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. So kind of that whole existential dread with eventual hope at the end, and you know, choosing this thing called faith, and we don't know why, but we do it. And anything like that fascinates me, or all the way back to Rumi, which is, I think, Persian, and you know, you broke the cage and went free. There's a quote. I think I may not have said it exactly right, but just that imagery of freedom.
There'll be points off on your quiz.
I know. I think I'm going to get a C minus on that. But anything that's about the struggle and in the middle of the complexity and all the broken stuff, finding hope and choosing hope in the end, that's probably what I write about. And I love nature, and I love solitude, and I love, like, I'll read one of those poems too.
Oh, well, that's a good intro. Why don't you read another poem? We'd love to hear it. This is a program about your writing and this book, and so we would love to hear more.
I will read a poem from my nature section.
How is the book divided? You mentioned nature. Is there a structure that the different segments that you wanted to talk about, or?
Nature is woven into it all throughout, because it's just something I like to write about. The sections are the renewal, the pain, the people, the journey, and the joy. So it has a lot to do with dealing with hurt and pain, and then finding healing on the other side of it.
Great. Okay.
Red Rocks. I arrive at midnight and head out into the dark. Mountains surround me with wonder, covering my body in the night, capturing my spirit with nature's power. Colorado overtaken by lion of splendor, a mighty beast of nature, a beacon of deity's creation. Partly I get lost, partly I am entranced, partly I am hypnotized by the mystique of this place, imagining I am a highwayman, looking for ghost riders up in the clouds. I am lost in the red rocks, falling in love every minute.
Wow. Well, at first I thought you were going to take us to Sedona in Arizona, but this was where was this exactly in Colorado?
It was in the mountains. I think I had flown in late and I was lost, actually. I was on a business trip. Yeah.
All right.
Poetry doesn't pay the bills. There's no money in poetry, and no poetry in money.
I have not yet met anybody. I mean, I have not yet interviewed anybody who is supporting themselves full time by poetry. So yes, yay for the day job.
On my business trips, I'll go to the ocean or the mountains or wherever, and I'll write a poem.
Excellent.
That's how I break up the business stuff a little bit.
Well, that sounds like a good balance, very good balance of the personal and the day-to-day requirements that pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
But that was lovely. I mean, you definitely transport the writer to that environment.
Thank you.
Yeah, take you far away. So
Thank you.
That's important. prior to the show starting, we were talking briefly that you've had a number of, you launching this book with Orange Hat. You've had a couple of events, and I do want to be sure to mention that you are going to be a featured poet for Highland Park Poetry on Saturday, November 17th at 7 p.m. And we have a new venue now, Coffee Speaks, which is a delightful little coffee shop located at Port Clinton Square, and the address is 610 Central Avenue, Suite 155. So we are. You'll actually be in a double header with poet Carol Glore, who's also got a new book coming out. So the two of you will share the spotlight that evening. But it'll be great to hear you read, and we're certainly looking forward to that event. But so yes, now that I've taken this time for the commercial, you tell me about some of the other places that you've been reading the book.
Sure. Well, thank you for the invite. I'm ecstatic to be part of that in November. So some events have happened, some being planned, some already planned and coming up, yours being one of them. I have had a few different book opening features, one at a local coffee shop called the Area General Store in my hometown of Mundelein. I've been to 2 bookstores as well for signings and features. I am planning an event at a local library, but that won't occur till early next year. I also have a feature at Brewed Awakening coming up in 2 weekends, the 30th of September through the Illinois Poetry Society. There'll be 2 of us actually presenting, and it's on their websites. That's it for now, and continuing to look at options and venues. And one of the things I really enjoy is to look at poetry as a form of therapy and as a form of healing. And so I've been talking with a friend a little bit more about that, and may develop some materials. So if I'm going to the libraries or I'm doing any sort of workshops, which I would really desire just to do as a free service through the local libraries and things like that. I'd really enjoy putting together a workshop of that variety. To teach it is really journaling, poetry, any form of writing is something that can be very deeply personal and very helpful for a person.
Oh, definitely. That sounds great. And that's wonderful that you want to get the word out there that this journey of writing poetry can be a form of self-therapy, I guess you say, or in self-healing. So that's a wonderful message. Yeah. But I guess you've also discovered that, part of the challenge is not only in writing the poems and finding a publisher. Those are just, steps along the journey. Getting the book out there to readers is so important and a challenge too.
Yes.
Especially in this world where nowadays I don't think that a lot of people read poetry. I mean, unless you're related to a poet. Yeah. I don't know that people go into bookstores and ask, or even go online on Amazon and say, I think I'll see what's the new poetry books that are out this year.
Right.
So it's hard.
It takes some energy. I think that our poetry is baked into our music personally, because I still think a lot of artists are truly poets, whether it's the late Aretha Franklin and I think of her song "A Rose Is Still a Rose," or current singers, it's hip hop. I've got a cousin who does a little bit of hip hop, and he's really a poet.
Okay. Don't tell him that.
But it is hard if you like poetry, if you're into it. Really it's the academic community, and I don't consider myself a huge academic. I mean, I'm a business person. I'm not a professor. And so that community appreciates it, but it's rather petite. And so how do you get poetry out there? I think Rupi Kaur has done a good job, or R.M. Drake. So Rupi Kaur sold 500,000 of her books, Milk and Honey. I think it's 500,000 plus, actually.
Wow, that's great.
So there are a few, but you've got to get out on Instagram and maybe Facebook. I think that's less relevant, but all of the social media feeds, and almost make little JPEGs, get the hashtags. So the traditional poetry is less traditional, I think, these days. So getting it out there, I mean, little books will take it. I've got it at some really cool bookstores, Quimby's and This Old Book, and my local coffee shop / store, Area General Store, and Book Bin. I'll have it on the shelf. They're really supportive of indie authors. but it's hard to get out there if you're not a name that's known, and it's hard to become a name that's known if you're a poet.
Right, I'd say it's much more hard. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. But it can be done. A lot of hashtags.
Okay, so what are the, yeah, all right, so that's a whole new conversation to try to explain to me what those darn hashtags do.
Yeah.
But I guess it's imperative to understand and to drive traffic to your
right. Tweet your poems, Insta-post your poems. You have to do all that, I guess. I guess
my worry about that, about using the social media is if it turns against you in the way that then someone takes your poem and then is sharing it, and your words are being shared publicly on that very broad open forum and not crediting you.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to choose almost what you're comfortable with having that happen to versus what you're not. So, little sayings or blurbs that you're okay if it's elsewhere are the only ones you want to post, because it can and will be taken, retweeted, reposted, etc.
And somehow the author's name will be
removed, potentially.
Yes, right. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the scary thing.
Yeah.
Well, no, let's see. I was going to ask about copyright. So this is all part of the process with Orange Chat, is that you have a copyright then on your...
They have rights to the book for the period of the contract, but you do also send the copyright to the government.
Okay.
So you go through that whole official process.
Wow. Yeah. Are you working on a new manuscript?
Not brand new. I have a very small little collection that I self-published. I'm still working on a fiction novel, but I think that'll take a while before it's ready. It's about 145 to 50 pages right now. And
is that a
lot
of
work? Yes and no.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the critiques I'm told.
You said that you liked love stories. I thought, well, maybe that's what the novel is.
Yeah, but I combine them with all the other stuff.
Okay.
So it's a love story, yes, and it's a study of the darker side of corporate America, and it's a story of forced prostitution in New York City.
Whoa! Okay, that's kind of
it's 3 stories, and that's where I think it needs to be broken into maybe 3 different books or 2 different books.
All right.
I don't ever just do love stories. I don't see the world as that rosy. I see it as more complex than that and not that simple. So there is a love story, but within it is mental health, brokenness, suicide, and ultimately at the end everything's redemptive. So it's all these stories of life, and the end is redemptive.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, but I don't do easy or simple or just happy.
Well, that's true, because then there would be, if there were no conflict and no obstacles in our path, then we wouldn't have the need to see those redemptive stories.
I suppose so. So ask me in 3 years. It might be published by then.
All right. Well, we'll have you back. More poems.
Okay. I'd like to read one that honors my grandparents. There's a whole section in my book that honors some, not all, of the most important people in my life. And one is about my son, one is about my husband, one is about many people. This one is about my grandparents. All of them are heroes, but these 2 are still living. So while they're still living, and I have this opportunity to read a poem aloud, I'm going to read this.
Okay.
My heroes. 6:30 in the morning, and we are up and at 'em. An hour ago, I woke to the cracking of Grandma's massive baking, cooking endeavor. Sometimes when I visit, I take a hotel, so I can go out and see bands the night before, but not today. No, I want to smell bacon. I want to hear Grandpa say good morning. I want to go shopping with him and buy lotto tickets. But first, at 7 in the morning, we watch the sunrise together and ponder life. At the checkout counter, he offers to pay for the guy ahead of him. Things like that make my grandpas smile. That is why spending time with them for the few more years they are here is the most precious adventure one can have.
Okay, well, now I'm thinking about my own grandma who's still living. Wow, yeah, okay, that's a moving poem. But it does make you think about the heroes in our lives, and it's those small moments.
Yes.
And that's wonderful that you share those small moments with them.
Yeah. I read the poem to my grandpa, and he said, The few more years we're here.
Well, let's just get that straight. That's not the case.
He's going to live till he's 100.
Okay. All right.
He's almost 90.
And these days, people are living much longer,
Indeed.
so it's definitely possible.
Indeed.
Definitely possible. I'd love to hear any more.
Absolutely.
We've got enough time for maybe one more poem.
We'll read another nature poem inspired by a trip to Walden Pond.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
I visited Walden Pond last year and can see what Thoreau saw about its charm. Rippling waters, giggling and singing, just the right touch to capture imagination. The wild art of cloud canopy and grass-tickling skin. The ambiance to trigger thoughts from the universe, carried by the babbling of the lake and told by the croaking of the frogs, and whispered by the gentle breeze that whistles. How about if I read one that sits right next to it that was published on Highland Park Poetry?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Highland Park Poetry.
This was our winter theme, I do believe, right? Yeah. We had to write about snow. Winter dreams. Sometimes I think about moving to the south or out west or somewhere with refreshing beaches. But then I think about the snowflakes in winter, the magic of white crystals dissolving on my nose, snowballs and snow people and snow ice cream and snow forts and snow sledding and early evening walks in the field behind my house. Blanket of pure white spread out as far as I can see. Oh yes, I'll take sunshine and sand in the toes someday, but I will always return to a cold winter and snow that glistens in the air in my winter dreams.
So this was the problem, probably a poem, I'm guessing, that you wrote in like December.
Yes.
When the romance and the magic and with those first snowfalls, it looks like, you know, everything sparkles and everything.
Yeah.
By about March, I'm done.
Yeah, then I didn't want the snowflakes. I wanted the beach.
Right.
Yeah.
March,
digging
April,
out of my extra long driveway and pounding snowballs.
Yes, shoveling, doing the salt. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Right, so we can tell when you wrote that poem.
Exactly.
Well, that's definitely the heart of the Midwest, is being able
Absolutely.
to live in the wintertime. Oh, thank you for sharing that, and thanks again for coming here. I'm hoping that you're. I wish you the best of success in promoting your book and getting it out there.
Thank you.
I hope you develop a broad audience. Although it sounds with the workshops and the different readings that you have lined up and that you're continuing to work on, that you'll definitely develop an audience. But keep on writing for sure, and then come back when you have your next book of poetry. That would be wonderful.
Thank you, Jennifer.
If you have one, like another short one, we'd
Absolutely.
love to hear it.
Why don't we read the poem about the dog?
Okay, the poem about the dog.
There's another one coming out in East on Central about the dog.
Okay.
Too. I like my dog. Fluffy. 40 would soon happen. My teenage son growing. I wanted a little friend. I was stubborn about that dog. I told my husband it is time. Call it middle-aged crisis. My husband disliked dogs. He wasn't the biggest of fans, but I wooed him into the idea. In the end, we found our fluffy guy in a shelter on our way to see newborn pups. He raced around our ankles, kisses and barks and love as if to say, please free me. He began to melt our hearts. In fact, it was my husband who chose this very one, and he and Quincy bonded, a kinship canine kind.
Oh, wow. Well, and how perfect, because we started the conversation talking about the dog, so now we've gone full circle, and we've ended with the dog. And how also wonderful that your husband, who was initially resistant, is the very one that,
Absolutely. It's kind of funny. I remind him of that, yeah.
But now let's see. So is the dog, though, more your dog or more his dog?
Yeah. It's more mine, I suppose, but, well, my son as well. It's kind of hard to tell. My husband says I'm the alpha with the dog.
Oh, I see. So you're the boss, you're
I'm the
mom.
boss, yeah. I think just because I see him more and I take him out more. And,
yeah, that definitely happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially,